On my channel, I get censored for debunking conspiracy theories about everything, including the current medical crisis, lies told by politicians about what happened when they tacitly agree with storming the Capitol and trying to prevent the vote from being counted. YouTube will flag me to death. And that means people can't look on my channel and find out that they're reposting shit. American physician and biochemist Robert Wallace Malone, while a graduate student researcher in the 1980s, was at odds with his mentors and supervisors as a headstrong or as a strong-headed, bullheaded med student. And he conducted studies on existing and new mRNA tech. In the process of doing this, he did discover some new things, as any researcher should happen to do every once in a while. Worked hard for it. Discovered part of what would be messenger ribonucleic acid technology. Subsequently, his early work only focused on repurposing drugs and pharmaceutical research. Only after this, then he was a premier consultancy and analytics group head, according to his LinkedIn and every other page. He'd gone fallow and become a consultant. He claimed on his LinkedIn account to have invented the vaccine and be therefore an authority on it when poo-pooing it, only after COVID happened. There is no record before that point of him claiming to be the inventor. He wasn't full of it that hard. He found evidence that mRNA could be delivered to and produce proteins in cells. That's it. Not a vaccine. Nothing at all. This is one of many, many inventions in this series. This is like figuring out that if you run electricity through a piece of nichrome wire, it'll produce heat versus tungsten to produce light if you run it at a high enough current through very thin material. They are very different things, but they are basically a heating element. One produces infrared energy, the other one puts out the visible spectrum as a black body radiator. The invention of the light bulb we attribute to a specific inventor is for perfecting it. This man produced the equivalent to figuring out which elements you shouldn't use and which elements you might use to make a light bulb. He did not invent a vaccine. The fact that he claimed that on LinkedIn, and I have archives of it, I've debunked this fucker before. He's a liar. That's it. He's not a long-suffering scientist bringing us truths. He is a liar. Next. Yes, I'm risking getting my channel flagged by telling you someone's lying to you about this, and that agrees with mainstream media. Everyone gets flagged for mentioning this. Populist news sites on the internet, especially ones I'm noticing specifically in Australia, take a hard line on ignoring contradictory evidence. Fully vaccinated people account for 4 or 5 dead at hospitals. In an area where more than 4 in 5 are vaccinated. Now, I'm not going to process that for you. I want you to think really, really hard about it. Now, if you have a belief system that goes one way, you're going to keep bringing it up. There's something called just asking questions, where you ask people a question when you're making an assertion, and you don't want to be criticized for not providing evidence. But the other part of just asking questions is constantly creating fear, uncertainty, and doubt by just asking questions and never listening to the answer, and repeatedly asking the same fucking question. It's exhausting by nature, and it's a tactic to get people to shut up when you want to say things without being criticized. There is an entire group of people on the internet that will never stop asking questions that have been asked and answered, badgering the subject. It's part of just asking questions. It's a tactic. Originally, just asking questions was a barrage of hundreds of questions. Then there's the ad nauseum. Asking the same fucking thing over and over again, but slightly rephrasing it so it doesn't look like you're just badgering people. Constantly saying, these 5 people have doubts out of everybody else in the entire community doesn't have merit when it's the same fucking assertion. Well, we have questions. but we're on the internet and you can't ignore them. November 28th, 2020. A conspiracy print paper and online version came up called DRUTHERS. It's Truthers with a D instead. Through a mix of crowdfunding, ads, merchandise, sales. May have been started by Shawn Jason. The real name of the individual behind it is Shawn Jason Laplante, who left out his last name. You can decide what that means. And claimed only through a private Facebook group, December 4th of 2020, to be teaming up with Vaccine Choice Canada, which is not about you having vaccine choice, it's an anti-vax group. Or not. They're just asking questions. Chronically, the same ones, and ignoring any answer and not responding to the answers that would make it to where they run out of things to say as a question. Well, we have a 12-point group of questions, and it never changes, even though all of them have been asked and answered, and you can go look it up to find out if someone's lying to you, or whatever the number of points are. Not totally associated with Dave and Mike Bolton of Newmarket and Atomwaffen Division. Well, that's just an association, guilt by association. Sort of. And this paper is promoted by the Anti-Muslim Act for Canada website. Islamic fundamentalists that are violent, I am against. Apologists for them in that religion, I'm against, in the same way I'm against Christian fundamentalists being apologists for violence of any kind. You're not a Christian anymore, you're just a terrorist. But this isn't a group that's anti-Muslim immigrants that are violent. They're just... And anyway, Atomwaffen, if you're not aware of it, is a reference to a shitposting about an alternate history in Nazi Germany where they have atom bombs, and people posted jokingly that they were part of Atomwaffen because it's a preposterous thing. This ended up going from a meme to a white supremacist group in the United States. These and many other groups are associated with all sorts of counterfactual, primarily conservative organizations in the United States and in other countries. Or at least ones on the internet, which eventually sometimes get found out to be literally just two people claiming to be hundreds, or an organized effort by a specific country trying to make sure they don't look bad during an Olympics. Winnie the Pooh. So, but is this Druthers associated with Atomwaffen, aka neo-Nazis and stuff? I don't know. So what do they say? Well, they post all sorts of stories that are almost exclusively anti-vax, and then say, we're just asking questions. Who discovered the vaccine, mRNA, etc.? 1998, the technology was developed to the point that it was of useful merit. 1998, wait a minute, that's long after the 1980s, where the guy was a college student and a graduate student. Anyway, 1998, Katalin Karikó and Drew Weissman. They're the ones who are primarily referred to as being the source of the technology that would become or was used for making mRNA vaccines. A panel of world-renowned doctors and medical experts shows up to tell you we're just asking questions, fear uncertainty and doubt, and never listens to the answer or responds to replies that say you're quoting some work that was from early in the pandemic that was wrong. Senator Ron Johnson repeatedly gives platforms for notorious misinformation sources, it doesn't matter what they are, to further politics. Period, full stop. He's a politician, he's going to use sources to make him look like he's not just pulling stuff out of his ass. COVID-19 misinformation sources that are doctors, calling it a second opinion. A group of doctors and scientists that have been criticizing for repeating, not correcting medical misinformation when they initially said things that were simply wrong, demonstratively untrue, and then they got their panties in a bunch and didn't like being corrected by lowly, ordinary peers and went ahead and just kept repeating it. Some of the doctors, there's a whole bunch of them, there's like 100 or 200 of them now, out of literally hundreds of thousands of doctors on the planet that disagree with them. But who cares, right? Some of these doctors are people who simply came to the wrong conclusion in the beginning, or felt slighted because someone told them that their opinion wasn't valid on ventilators or whatever, or in one case, an ophthalmologist, an eye doctor, telling people how to treat COVID-19 with mineral spirits or something. These individuals become ingrained in anti-vax rhetoric and conspiracy theory bullshit. Now, we're going to get to emergency medical services and air medical personnel who pick up people to transport them from a wreck. If they encounter a victim that's trapped in a vehicle who must be there for a long time before they can get them out, they have to start working on them immediately while they're in the wreck. They are one with the metal, so they have to be dismantled from it. Miraculously, they tear the vehicle apart or cut pieces away and not pull them out of them because pulling them out would cause hemorrhaging. And then they sedate them in some cases. This includes airlifting or just taking them by vehicle or by stretcher. Somebody calling himself Ben, somewhere near Flagstaff, no other information about him, claimed he was in a car wreck. Okay. Claimed that the medical people sedated him at the scene, and he indicated that they jabbed him in the arm with a syringe. Most sedations can't. Okay, there is sedatives you can do that with, but most of them I'm aware of are used through IV, which is not what he was describing. He claimed they airlifted him to a hospital. He claimed he woke up on a ventilator and on an IV he was told had sedatives and painkillers. He described one of them that's just a sedative that's supposed to be IV'd. I'm not sure if they used a dart like they would use on a buffalo. I'm joking, obviously. I don't think that's happened. But he said he woke up on the ventilator and the IV with sedatives and painkillers and pulled out his breathing tube and the IV, because that's exactly what you should do. Or the sedative wore off and he wasn't being monitored at the time, which he indicated. He walked out to the staff who he said claimed he was ventilated because he had COVID. It's the only reason they ventilated him. Okay. Then he claimed after 45 minutes of asking questions, which were not given any answers to the most logical questions first, like, he left. Now, he claimed no relative of his would ever consent to this being put on a ventilator. He said the ventilator was done to kill him. He's using the meme that if you go on a ventilator, you will die. This is something people repeat without qualifying it if you were already going to die from pneumonia. He claimed he had no ID cards when he was found driving a car. So that proves that his relatives could never give consent. He was also told, his family was told that he had a broken nose, and then he mentioned an internal injury that they were told about. But he claimed that there's no way they could have given any consent because they couldn't have contacted his relatives with that information or asked for permission to put him on a ventilator, which isn't actually required under an emergency at all if you're not aware of it. And he claims he didn't have an ID when he was driving a car, or that they couldn't find it. Now he wants Alex Jones to repeat this story of him being on a ventilator only to kill him, and claiming as an excuse, or for real, that he had COVID-19 because he was in a car wreck where he hit his head and got enough glass ground into his head that he's still picking pieces out, probably. Or he had a concussion and was panicking and freaking out, which people don't like admitting to. Did you know emergency medical services in some counties are required to record a person because they will make claims that are spurious and file lawsuits, which he's talking about now. He was pulled out of a wreck that he had to be sedated to get out of. Okay. Think like an EMS person. If a person can physically just get out of a wreck and you don't have to take the porta power to it or the jaws of life or cutters or whatever. Oh, the listed reasons they will sedate someone. They're panicking, flipping out, or punching people. They're delirious from impact. They're not in the right mind at the moment. And again, he claimed this was an injection in his arm from a syringe needle. Personal response. Someone sent me an email mentioning all of these things and more. One of these people is someone I debunked to the point that I could find out that on his LinkedIn page, he essentially lied about being a vaccine inventor. He never made the claim before COVID-19. He's a self-promoting jerk. Most of the people depicted in a screenshot of a video of experts were people I debunked one at a time. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that.